Today, we're taking a journey back in time to visit the 10 greatest engineering feats of the ancient world, according to the Bible. And believe me, some of these ruins are still standing, hiding secrets that archaeology has only just begun to scratch. 10. The engineering of impossible survival. Noah's Ark is described not as a ship, but as the largest survival box ever designed in ancient history. Forget the rounded boats from children's illustrations. The text in Genesis details a colossal rectangular structure of solid wood, with proportions that naval engineering could only replicate with stability in the 19th century, using steel. 300 cubits in length. In current measurements, that's nearly 500 feet longer than a professional soccer field. Building this without industrial sawmills, cranes, or advanced metallurgy would be a logistical nightmare. The wood described, gopher wood, needed to be cut, transported, and fitted with millimeter precision to withstand water pressure without breaking. The real technical challenge wasn't floating, it was breathing. Placing thousands of animals in a closed environment would turn the structure into a toxic gas chamber within days. That's why the design included a continuous upper opening of 1 cubit, vital for creating an air current that would expel accumulated methane and heat. Without a rudder, without sails, and with an elongated shape, it functioned like a heavy barge designed purely not to capsize, even facing violent waves from any direction. The very shape guaranteed passive stability. The construction required impressive coordination, each plank cut by hand, each joint verified, each seam sealed with pitch to ensure total waterproofing. And all of this done by a team that had never seen a project of this magnitude. Today, the physical search for this structure focuses on the Ararat mountain region in present-day Turkey. The most famous site is the Durupinar Anomaly, a geological formation that has a shape and dimensions close to those described in the Bible, measuring 540 feet. But current scientific consensus considers it a natural formation. The area has been protected as a national park since 1987. 9. The Walls of Jericho. The Walls of Jericho were considered the ultimate defense of the ancient world, a double fortification system designed to be invincible. Located at the lowest point on Earth, this construction transformed the city into an impenetrable vault. Anyone looking from outside didn't see just a wall, but a layered defense machine. The engineering began with a solid stone retaining wall at the base, nearly 16 feet high, made to prevent landslides and halt enemy infantry advance. Above this stone base, a second wall of mud bricks rose another 20 to 26 feet. And if an army managed to scale all of this, they would still encounter a steep embankment before facing the main upper wall that surrounded the city. Militarily, invading Jericho was suicide. Those inside had fresh water from underground springs and food stocks to last for months. The collapse described in the biblical narrative is an anomaly. The walls weren't knocked inward by battering rams, but fell outward, creating a natural ramp for invaders to climb. Archaeologists who studied the site confirmed this unusual destruction pattern, possibly caused by an earthquake. And speaking of antiquity, Jericho holds something even more impressive. Long before these Bronze Age walls existed, someone built there the world's oldest freestanding stone tower, dated to approximately 10,300 years ago. 28 feet high, with 22 internal stone steps that remain intact to this day, proving that place was always a disputed fortress. Today, the ruins of Tel Es Sultan in the West Bank have been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since September 2023. The Neolithic tower is protected by a suspended bridge, and visitors can walk through layers of 10 millennia of history frozen in stone. 8. Solomon's Temple. Solomon's Temple was the most ambitious and expensive work in Israel's history, designed to be a box of gold and stone. that would house the divine presence. The construction of this building defied the logic of the time because it required absolute silence at the construction site. Religious law prohibited iron tools from touching the stones at the sacred location. This created an insane engineering challenge. Each limestone block, weighing tons, needed to be cut and measured with surgical precision miles away. In the underground quarry, if a stone arrived at the top of Mount Moriah and didn't fit, there was no way to adjust it there. The error would be fatal. Thousands of workers operated like clockwork to assemble this giant puzzle without making chisel noise. Each stone had symbols carved indicating its exact position. The builders read the marks and fitted them in absolute silence. Inside, the structure was even more impressive. No stone was visible. Walls, ceiling, and floor were covered with noble cedar and layered with pure gold sheets. Without windows in the main sanctuary, candlestick light reflected on the gold, creating an environment that seemed like a solid sun inside. The Holy of Holies, 30 feet in each dimension, was completely plated in beaten gold. Giant wooden cherubim, 15 feet tall, were also covered in gold, with open wings touching the walls. All of this was built to last forever. 400 years later, the Babylonians burned the wood and dismantled the stones to loot the precious metal. They didn't leave a single structural stone at the site. Today, not a single stone from the first temple remains on the current Temple Mount. Artifacts from the period appear only in the Temple Mount Sifting Project, where Babylonian arrowheads were found mixed with layers of fire ash, confirming the destruction of 586 BC. 7. The Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel, or the Great Ziggurat of Shinar, was humanity's first skyscraper attempt. Born from a technological revolution, the fired brick. Before this construction, tall buildings were limited by the irregular shape of stones. But in that Mesopotamian plain, builders discovered that baking clay in kilns created uniform blocks, hard as rock. Using bitumen natural asphalt as mortar, they managed to erect an artificial stepped mountain to a height that no stacked stone would allow. The structure's objective was clear: to create a landmark visible for miles so that humanity wouldn't scatter. A centralizing monument that would touch the heavens. The work required millions of bricks and mass coordination never before seen. Kilns operating day and night. Thousands of workers molding, baking, transporting, and laying the blocks. Supervisors shouting orders in a language everyone could understand. Each team depended on precise communication to maintain the construction pace. A mistake in the chain of command meant wasted time and material. The project's end didn't come from structural failure, but from the collapse of communication among workers. Suddenly, no one could coordinate anything anymore. One worker shouted, asking for mortar. Another brought bricks. Total confusion. The construction site stopped, and the unfinished tower remained as a giant skeleton on the horizon, slowly being dismantled by future generations who stole its bricks to build houses. Today, there isn't a ruin we can point to with absolute certainty as the Tower of Babel. What archaeology confirms is that giant ziggurats, made with the exact technology of baked brick and bitumen described in Genesis 11, verse 3, were the standard for that region. 32 ziggurats are known, 28 in Iraq, 4 in Iran, and their eroded bases still dot the landscape. 6. Herod's artificial mountain. Many think Solomon's temple was the pinnacle. But in our list of the greatest biblical constructions, what came after made the original look like a model. We advance to the year 20 BC. Jerusalem is now under the shadow of the Roman eagle, and on the throne sits Herod the Great. A man hated by his own people, paranoid, but who possessed a brilliant architectural mind. He knew he wouldn't be loved, so he decided to be unforgettable through stone. His project wasn't just to renovate the ancient sanctuary, It was to double the size of the very mountain where it stood. The geographical problem was immense. Mount Moriah was a narrow and irregular peak, too small for the king's megalomania. The engineering solution was insane. Herod ordered the construction of 4 gigantic retaining walls around the mount and filled the space between them and the natural rock. Basically, he created a titanic stone box and transformed the mountaintop into a giant flat plaza, capable of housing hundreds of thousands of pilgrims. To hold all this earth, Herodian engineers cut limestone blocks that defy modern logic. They used no mortar. The stones were cut with such precision that not even a sheet of paper could pass between them, and their own weight kept them in place. Some of these stones weigh over 500 tons. Moving a monolith of this size without hydraulic cranes required a complex system of pulleys, wooden rails, and brute human force. The construction noise echoed through the city for 80 years, long after the king's death. The structure was so white and adorned with gold that anyone looking directly at it under midday sun would be momentarily blinded. If you believe that history leaves traces that not even time can erase, comment now. History is alive. In the year 70 AD, Roman legions not only burned the city, but dismantled the structure stone by stone to get the gold melted in the cracks. What remains of this colossal ambition is the Western Wall, which actually isn't the temple wall, but just that external retaining wall. Underground, in the Western Wall tunnels, you can still see the Western Stone, a giant block of 250 to 300 tons that remains there, immobile, supporting the esplanade. Fiv, the true stairway to infinity. If the Tower of Babel is the myth that haunts collective memory, the next construction on our list is the reality of brick and pitch that inspired the nightmare. We now enter the Babylon of Nebuchadnezzar II, the king who transformed a mud city into a vibrant, colored metropolis that seemed to have been painted by the gods themselves. At the center of this empire rose the Etemenanki, a Sumerian name meaning the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. It wasn't just a tall building, it was the axis of the universe for the Babylonians. Unlike the unfinished structure of Genesis, this ziggurat was completed and maintained with maniacal obsession. A 7-story stepped ziggurat, rising 300 feet toward the scorching Iraqi sun. But what made ancient travelers lose their breath wasn't just the height, but the color. The temple top was covered with glazed bricks of deep blue, fired with ground lapis lazuli, making the structure seem to merge with the sky itself. From above, Marduk's golden statue watched over the city. Shining so brightly, it served as a desert beacon. The engineering here wasn't about stacking, but about drainage. Building a mud mountain in the middle of an alluvial plain meant fighting moisture constantly. Babylonian architects created a complex system of ventilation channels inside the massive structure of raw bricks, so moisture would evaporate, preventing the core from rotting and the tower from imploding under its own weight. It was a constant battle against nature. This marvel's fall wasn't a sudden divine punishment, but a bureaucratic tragedy. When Alexander the Great conquered Babylon, he was so impressed, he ordered a renovation. But his engineers decided the best way to fix it was to dismantle everything to the foundation to rebuild from scratch. The problem was, Alexander